You're listening to Creating a Universe, a Love Anarchy podcast hosted by William J. Rogers. On this show, we follow the journey of creatives, artists, and entrepreneurs who are making a name for themselves in the ever-evolving landscape of today's industry. Featuring an insight into both Love Anarchy and the LovAnaverse music universe, as well as the individual projects and stories of each of our guests, from the music industry and beyond. So whether you're a budding creative or simply interested in what goes on behind the scenes, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Creating a Universe. I'm your host William J. Rogers, and today's episode is a very special one as it's our very first one. So we'll normally be looking to have guests on the show, but as it's the first episode today, I figured I'd get things kicked off myself. Just going to do a bit of an introduction to the podcast and tell you a little bit about my own story. So let's get into it. So what exactly is this podcast about? Well, I'd say first and foremost, it's about the journey of a creative person. Whether that's you or, as an artist or entrepreneur, or perhaps you're just someone that's interested in the inner workings of it all. Either way, I hope that this is going to be educational, entertaining, or valuable to you in some kind of way. So creating a universe, what does that mean? You know, there's kind of a couple of angles on this. If you follow what we do, if you're already familiar with my work, then you'll know that the big kind of creative project that we have is called the LovAnaverse music universe. And so the idea for that is kind of that it's like lots of different artists that are all these kind of fictional characters. They all have their own story and stuff, and they're all from the same fictional universe, the LovAnaverse. So in a sense, we're kind of literally creating our own universe. But there's also kind of a second spin on this, which is that we all live in our own little world, in a way, especially as creative people, we just kind of, live in our own little bubble. And that's surrounded by all the things that we're thinking about and the ideas that we have and the things that we want to achieve and, the art that we create. And so I kind of call that process like creating your own little universe. And so a lot of what we're going to be doing here on this podcast is to get an insight into these little universes of various different creators. We want to kind of get beneath the surface of, what inspires them to do what they do and what their visions are and what their ways of going about making a name for themselves are, So we'll be talking about things from a creative angle. We'll be talking about things from a business angle, no holds barred in a way, so we can make things as kind of transparent and as valuable as possible. That's the idea. So creating a universe, whether it's our universe, Love Anarchy and the LovAnaverse, or it's the own little creative universes of all of our various guests. We're going to be getting into all of that. And ultimately from this, give you an experience that I hope as a creator yourself, you can find resourceful. And I hope as potentially just a fan or listener that really kind of gives you a deeper insight into all the kind of goings on of your favorite creative people. So once again, just a little bit more about what I do to kick things off. And I'm the founder of a company called Love Anarchy, which is responsible for Love Anarchy Records and the LovAnaverse music universe. So that music universe, the idea is that there's lots of these artists and they're all from the same fictional universe, kind of like the Marvel universe, but with rock stars instead of superheroes. So each of them has their own kind of story, their own inspirations and aesthetic and musical style. And I work on these projects with various collaborators to kind of bring organic life to these characters, let's say. Um, we've got a bunch of them so far. There's Flavour Nurse, which is a band that I front, and there's Yarima, which is fronted by my wife Maria. There's plenty more as well coming along the way. Really, the kind of vision is the sky's the limit, and in the future we'll be looking to make a lot of these different artists. So that's the LovAnaverse. As well as that, we also look to extend our services towards supporting other artists. I mean, we've had to do a lot ourselves and learn a lot and build resources to be able to do what we're doing. So we would like to be able to share that with people who can benefit. And therefore, we kind of offer a host of mostly remote services that, creative people and artists and entrepreneurs and stuff can reach out. In terms of my own personal journey, I've been playing music my whole life, really. I was obsessed with music from a very young age. And I started teaching myself guitar around 7 or 8 years old. And yeah, just really played it obsessively from that point. I was kind of absolutely determined to become a rock star, in this typical sense. So even back then, I was always trying to form bands and create projects. Most of my friends didn't even really play instruments, but I would kind of give everybody a name and try and get some kind of band together. It was really cool at the time that I was growing up in the early 2000s. You just had these kind of internet innovations coming along like YouTube and MySpace. So I'd be like 11 years old on my computer creating MySpace pages for my kind of fictional bands and, trying to add record labels and things like that. It was pretty cool. I mean, I don't think any of them would have known that it was just an 11-year-old kid, but there we go. So yeah, I mean, it's funny because, it's not a million miles away from what I'm doing now. So, I guess in a way I just felt always compelled to do this kind of work. And, I was always particularly drawn to these kind of theatrical acts, larger than life artists that sort of blended kind of multimedia aspects into what they were doing. So, from bands like Kiss or I don't know, Rob Zombie, to kind of more modern times, you have bands like Ghost and virtual bands as well. It was another big thing. So something like Gorillaz or Death Clock from Metalocalypse, that was certainly hugely influential. I that just always excited me, and I always enjoyed the likes of musical theater and just these kind of larger than life sort of bombastic productions. They're so fun and can be such great pieces of art that I always felt very inspired by it. So I played music really all the way, as I said, from when I was a kid. Throughout my teenage years, I was constantly just, trying to form bands and, hoping that, I don't know, we could get some record deal or whatever, and I could just go on tour and live crazy rock and roll lifestyle. Obviously, it didn't really turn out like that, like as with most people. And, I had a lot of personal issues and stuff growing up, and my parents sort of split when I was young, and so yeah. I mean, in lack of really kind of seeing much success, having lots of projects fall apart and whatnot, it just kind of got the better of me. I felt a bit sort of aimless and directionless in life, and had some issues with drugs and alcohol and things like that. I just depression and these things that many creative people kind of experience. I got myself into a real rut, and then I decided that I just had nothing to lose. Once you hit rock bottom, you kind of it dawns on you. And, you know, I just felt that kind of ultimatum of the fact that I could waste my life away, or, you know, I could really just clean up my act and make a serious attempt, just put absolutely everything I've got into trying to make a success of myself, you know, and to make a career in music. The one project that I had that, you know, kind of stood the test of time and kind of got me through all these years was a project called Flavour Nurse, which is a kind of crucial part of the LovAnaverse. But back then, it was really just an idea between me and Toby, who is, you know, one of my best friends since childhood. He would play bass and I played guitar, and we'd write songs together. And we had this kind of vision of the perfect rock band that we could form from it. And really, just that idea is kind of what got me through some of these harder times and gave me something to work towards. And that meant that when I felt that I needed to go all in, I had something to take direction with. So yeah, for a while, Toby and I, we lived together and we got a place, and I just spent time learning music production and demoing our songs. I was also getting clean at the time, and just, you know, realigning myself to be as effective as possible. You know, we managed to get a full band together and start gigging, and, you know, that was cool. That got us, you know, out of the rut, and you know, out there doing something at least. So for a time we were, you know, playing the gigs and doing all that, but I realized if we really wanted to be successful, that it'd be kind of necessary to think of this as a business. And, you know, I mean, that's a very important aspect to being successful as an artist that many artists neglect. And ultimately that will be a downfall, because, you know, you can sort of have this hopeful thinking that, you know, if you just kind of go out there and keep at it, that something will come out the sky and happen for you, you know. But that doesn't happen so much these days, you know, with a lucrative record deal for an unknown band, you know. I mean, especially in this online era, you have to really kind of take things into your own hands when it comes to building a fan base. So I knew that we had to do something and that it had to be serious, but I didn't know what to do. I was honestly completely clueless when it came to business. I just kind of jumped headfirst into the deep end and tried to learn everything that I could. And we founded Love Anarchy as a company in 2017. I was 21 years old at the time. And yeah, I mean, at first it was just like running around like headless chickens. You know, there was a group of us, and we all just sort of wanted to be useful and have ideas and do all of that. But it took a long time before it was organized in any kind of sense of, you know, doing real business. Nonetheless, at that kind of time, we were mostly using it for promoting shows and stuff that we were doing. We'd hire out venues and get friendly bands and stuff to play, and put it all under Love Anarchy. Really, during that time, I, you know, went the old school route a little bit more, and I literally spent my time just going out to gigs and pubs and whatnot every night. You know, just networking at shows and meeting bands, seeing different bands perform every night. I did that for ages, and as well, like coming off the back of, you know, being somewhat of a hermit for some time and having my struggles and stuff, I was kind of a nervous wreck at the time that we formed Love Anarchy. But I knew that I wanted to make new for ourselves. Like we got a new place together and moved to a new town, and so just wanted to hit the ground running. So yeah, we'd spoken about the ideas of using characters and concepts and such within the band, Flavour Nurse and the likes. And so I had this character, Gaius Black, which is my alter ego, as it were. And at that time, I suppose I was having a little bit of a crisis of identity and whatnot, and we kind of died down from the LovAnaverse, taking the front stage, whilst Flavour Nurse was active as a band. Really, we kind of started to just get carried away with following this trajectory of being an up-and-coming band in our own right. So as I was Gaius in the band, and that was my kind of stage name, I decided to sort of really adopt that more as my whole image. So I really just, had the kind of stage clothes and whatnot, and that's what I would carry around with me all the time. So, from all kinds of things, really, it was sort of psychedelic, gothic, glam kind of attire. I would wear flares and feather boas was a real signature of Flavour Nurse. We always played our shows with feather boas across our mic stands, and people would always love them and try and steal them and throw feathers around. And there was actually always a feather trail wherever we'd been. You could always tell that Flavour Nurse had been somewhere because there'd be little multicolored feathers all down, all down the path to Flavour Nurse was here. And so yeah, during this time I just was Gaius. I would go out to gigs every night, as I said, and just meet people and introduce myself as Gaius. Gaius, the frontman of Flavour Nurse, and dude from Love Anarchy. And at the time, that's kind of what Love Anarchy became, was just like this community. I thought of it more like a movement, like, the grunge movement or something, in that we could kind of unite a load of bands that are kind of on similar wavelengths, and we can all sort of just club together to share our resources and our skills and all, help one another out in achieving our goals, which, our like-minded goals of becoming successful bands ultimately. So yeah, I would go out and see hundreds and hundreds of bands, and the ones that I really kind of made the connection with the most, would invite them to kind of become a part of Love Anarchy, just a part of our community and what we were doing. And really that's kind of what it was. As I say, I was still very incompetent when it came to business. I was kind of just a clueless, artsy kind of guy. And yeah, so I guess there was this kind of idea of like, we could have Love Anarchy Records, our own label that can put our music out, and we can have Love Anarchy this and that to kind of benefit all of us, and we can all sort of club in and work on it together. Eventually that kind of became tricky because I kind of realized that there needed to be, more leadership there. There needed to be some kind of sense of structure for that to be successful. Like, if we had a properly running record label, then there's something valuable to offer, We had the gigs and stuff, but I think that most people that have come up on the gigging scenes in today's day and age will know that it's not what it used to be. Gigs can be pretty tricky. Don't get me wrong, they're not, live music isn't dead by any means, but people certainly don't go out to pubs to watch local bands, definitely like they perhaps used to. In fact, we all know that all the small venues are in trouble of closing down as it is. So, that's one thing. And you know, say what you will about the live music scene. For us, we were struggling to really cut through there. And so yeah, working with all these other bands in this kind of way, it sort of, tensions kind of arose and it all kind of fizzled out, that happens. But it definitely just taught me that I needed to take action personally on creating something that delivers real value. I wanted to genuinely really be able to help other artists, and I wanted to be able to get myself out there too, and just extend that sense of community, and get my ideas and my music and my creations, out to people who will ultimately enjoy them and find value in them. So I just kept my head down. I kept learning everything that I could about business or marketing or how to do anything that's involved here, which there is an awful lot of things that are involved. So that's kept me busy. And at the same time, creatively, I started to get kind of stagnant within just performing in Flavour Nurse and being a band. There had always been these ideas with Toby and our other friend Rob. We'd always spoken about the LovAnaverse, as it were. So all of these kind of characters and stories that we'd created. Early on, Rob had a character. I think Rob's character existed before the Flavour Nurse ones even did. And that was Grundle Bumfist. Obviously, very tongue-in-cheek name and character to reflect. And so Grundle is a part of the Flavour Nurse story, and they know each other, and those guys play in Grundle's band as well, Black Tongue Bile. However, all that was just some kind of nonsense stories that we'd created together. Nevertheless, Rob would come to the Flavour Nurse shows dressed as Grundle, as this character with, black metal makeup and spiky gloves and, topless with leather harnesses. And it was a very outlandish character, and he would just kind of be a part of our show. He would do crazy antics. He'd do lighting, but he would really use the lights more as props. And just cause kind of general, let's just say he kept the crowd on their toes. One particular signature move that we do all the time is Flavour Nurse has a song called Love Is The Reason, and it has this it's a kind of ballady song, and it has this epic guitar solo. And so Grundle would come out to the front of the stage, and I would mount him essentially onto his shoulders, and he would carry me through the audience as I played this guitar solo, and often throw in plenty of his own antics as well. It was funny times, but yeah, obviously people would see that and they would not understand anything about the context of this. But it was a pretty kind of wacky, entertaining thing at the show, I suppose. So people enjoyed Grundle and, these kind of crazy names and stuff that we all had. Yeah, but after a while anyway, I decided that we needed to do more with the LovAnaverse. I got tired of going to these gigs and, standing in piss in really awful toilets of these venues and whatever, and yeah, I kind of burned out from that, and I sort of reset myself musically in a way. Like I spent some time just listening to classical music and kind of rediscovering my inspiration. And from there, because I was living in London at the time, I decided instead of going to the gigs and stuff, I'd go to the theaters instead on the West End. I figured that I probably wasn't going to live in London forever, but whilst I'm here, I might as well make the most of it. If you're clever as well, and you're buying tickets in short notice, then you can get some pretty amazing prices. I mean, I'd literally be going for £10-15 to all the shows on the West End, and I'd see operas as well, and classical music performance, and these things just really started inspiring me. I was also getting into film music, and just this amazing depth of musicality that there is in orchestration, and as well just composing for something like musical theater, where you're incorporating story and choreography, and it's just a kind of full-bodied spectacle, as it were. And I just realized that if that's what really inspired me to create. I knew that even Flavour Nurse, it was always hard to settle on the genre. It was always rock, but just kind of an entire rainbow of rock music, all the different elements that we liked, and yeah, I could never necessarily fixate on just being, this niche. And yeah, that kind of creative itchiness just, eventually kind of grew out of Flavour Nurse, and I knew that I could make, for instance, that record for Black Tone Bile. I knew that I could write some really great, heavier stuff that I felt compelled to do. And again, because I was always just so inspired by other artists, when I would see these other bands on the scene that I really connected with, I was so inspired by them, especially often the front people. I just with larger than life character and these charismatic performances, it just inspired me so much to how they could be this character, in terms of what they represent, and that whole thing could be turned into such a spectacle, and I want to write music for that. So yeah, I knew that the only way it'd be possible to really write such a spectacle is to go back to this idea we had of a universe that connected a whole host of musical acts. And I thought that that's something that's never really been done before, not on this scale. And why? Because, in my mind, that would be the coolest thing ever. And in reality, there's definitely some good reasons why, because it's insanely difficult to pull off. If it's not hard enough to make it with one artist as it is, creating a whole bunch of them is pretty crazy. But, nonetheless, this is a vision that I've always been committed to, and especially from this point on, I just really started to focus in on that. So yeah, again, I kept my head down even more and learned even more skills, and that's something that's never ending. Never had any money, so it's, always been a case of being as resourceful as I could possibly be. So once things kind of winded down with playing gigs with Flavour Nurse, I kind of realized that if we were going to focus on creating all these different projects and it would be sort of concept based, that the focus on live music was probably going to have to go, at least at this time. So things started winding down with Flavour Nurse performing as a band, and at that kind of time, I also met my wife, Maria, and that was definitely a blessing for me, because really from that point onwards, I started to kind of have much more sense of stability in my life. If it wasn't quite clear, I lived a relatively chaotic lifestyle prior to that. So that gave me a lot more perspective, and as well, Maria was driven in a similar way, and also had a lifelong passion for music as a singer and a songwriter, but is also very resourceful. She was skilled as a photographer, but again, in the from all the experience that we've kind of lived and working on making our whole thing happen, her skills have grown enormously, and she's done the majority of the graphic design work and the visual kind of work to everything that we've been doing. So yeah, Maria and I kind of formed the real team, and we obviously got a place together, and we made our own little home studio. And this was in London still. But that meant that I started to really focus on being a producer, because then if I could produce the music myself, that was certainly going to be a much more direct way, especially without money, of making the things happen that we wanted to do. So we set up that studio, and I started producing music, and we produced Yarima, which is the project that Maria is fronting. And as well, at this time, we were also working with some other bands. So I was producing bands and kind of just helping them out, not necessarily managing them, but helping them with the various things that that we can help them with, and sort of welcoming them into this kind of Love Anarchy family, this community. And so yeah, it's always again remained at the focus of what we're kind of about, that we want to create this community with artists and kind of help support other artists, especially like-minded, good people that just want the same things that we all want. And so yeah, I think the way that developed was that through all of these skills that Maria and I have built, from making this business and learning how to market it, and learning e-commerce and email funnels and Facebook ads and all of these things, that became the way that we could really deliver value to artists or other creators, or even just people that can benefit from those things. First and foremost, people that we have a connection with, of course. We want all these interactions to be meaningful, and valuable, at least. So yeah, that kind of began in London. And then Maria and I, we kind of went on a bit of a crazy journey, and obviously it was a bit of a mad time for everybody when lockdown hit. But at that time, I'd been growing frustrated. I wanted to get out of London. I was born in London and lived in the kind of slums for most of my life there. And I was just kind of sick of it. I wanted to get somewhere with more space so we could just concentrate on doing this work, because it was an absolute ton of work. So yeah, I needed to leave my day job, leave London. That was, everything that I was looking for at that time. So then when there was a sign that we could be going into lockdown, that made me think, like, we have to do it now. We have to get out. Otherwise we don't know what's going to happen. And so that was a bit of a crazy time. I won't go into everything of it now, but we basically had a little bit of a chaotic situation moving around, but we eventually settled down up in the north of England. And yeah, that ended up being everything that we were looking for. We got set up there and went full-time on Love Anarchy. And yeah, certainly was challenging for a good time, but we were doing what we were meant to be doing, and that was the most important thing. So yeah, we really just spent all of our time learning, but hands-on, getting experience, and trying to kind of understand and learn the ropes of the whole kind of e-commerce aspect, how we could sell music online, and do social media and build a fan base and a community and make all that happen. And of course, as well, record our first albums. One good thing about obviously when we moved here is we got an even better studio that we could actually as well, plus a bit more experience on my end, we could actually really kind of produce, mix and master like full records ourselves. So in 2021, we recorded the debut Yarima album here, and and we put that out and started building a following for Yarima and a fan base, and honestly, that went really well, and certainly grateful for that. It's really fantastic to see how much some people out there love Yarima. As well, there had been the Flavour Nurse album, which had been in the works for years. We actually started recording stuff years before, and through all these kind of twists and turns, it just never fully clicked together. And so eventually, by the end of the year as well, we finished off the album. So we had some stuff that was recorded, some parts. We recorded some stuff again. A couple of songs needed to be recorded from scratch. But those songs really had existed for years by that point, and it was therefore kind of quite a cathartic thing to finally release the Flavour Nurse album. But of course, the unique thing this time is that we'd built the LovAnaverse, as an entity, and we made our website that's full of all this kind of lore and stuff of parts that Toby and Rob and I predominantly had written over the years. And we released this music under that. So we have Yarima and Flavour Nurse, and they're both artists that are from this universe. And so by 2021, we'd kind of established our thing, what it is that we do, this music universe. So as well as working on the LovAnaverse stuff, we also had the services and such, which of course we just focused on, more remote services that we can offer. So, which is still plenty, but there have been a couple of bands that have come and recorded here, but, mostly friends and such that we have more, of a closer connection with. But predominantly we focus on, in music, I can do the mixing and mastering and such here. And, we have all of our graphic design services and marketing services, the advertising and emails, and ultimately, I can consult with people via Zoom or something along those lines. So, there's lots of ways that I think that we can give support to artists, and people are free to just get in touch about that. And again, I think the most important thing is that we have somewhat of a connection. It doesn't mean that we need to know each other first to inquire. It just means that, we should have some common ground. If I can really get a grasp of who you are as an artist and the music that you're making, and if you think that we're going to be the right people to work with for you, then I think that we can have a meaningful connection develop where that we can, both benefit from. That's the idea anyway. I mean, of course, as well, the LovAnaverse is just a very collaborative project by nature. So, we always want to be finding the kind of best people to work with there. And, of course, I'm therefore open to creating new characters, new projects, new music with people. Because ultimately with the LovAnaverse, I want to expand it as far as it can go. My vision would be that in the future, there's going to be plenty of people working on this and creating projects and music. And, it's not necessarily all just about me and my work. I just, as long as I maintain my outlet for that, I'm happy to focus on the projects that, I really can deliver on and, enable many more great ones to happen. Because once again, in the bigger picture, for me, it's all about community, and it's all about creating an environment that a lot of people can find value in, whether that's creators, and artists and such, or just fans, listeners, people that enjoy the overall experience. Those are the people that we want to serve. And So yeah, I mean, that takes up a lot of what we do, and that's sort of where we are now. Um, Going forward, we've got a whole bunch of LovAnaverse projects coming out. Um, some stuff has been kind of teased and others not. We have obviously the project with Grundle, Black Tongue Bile, which is a death metal space opera. The first album is like an hour-long opera that we wrote, and it's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. It's heavy, but over the top and silly and bombastic, and I think hopefully just good fun, really. And I hope that people are going to enjoy that. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but if you like something like Metalocalypse, which I mentioned earlier, that Toby, Rob, and I mean, we grew up watching that as teenagers, and in a way, I'd say this project is kind of like our little nod to that and to Deathclock. But it's certainly very much our own. I mean, Grundle is quite a unique character, and the whole world that he's from, that's a part of our universe, that's something that we're just going to get to explore more and more. So we've got that one, and we've got a whole bunch of other projects coming up, but yeah, I mean, if you follow what we're doing, you're going to see that, as it comes out. And if you listen to this podcast, of course, we're going to be talking about those projects. I mean, I'm going to actually personally try and be as transparent as I can about what goes into making those projects and how we run them. I want to do it in a way that's going to be useful if you're a creator yourself and you're looking to do something similar. Then you can learn from our experiences. I want to be transparent enough to deliver that. But at the same time, I also want it to just be entertaining, hopefully. And especially if you enjoy what we create, then hopefully it's going to be really cool to get to hear the real kind of process behind it. So, again, as I mentioned, I'm not planning to do too much of these by myself. But we will be talking to the collaborators on different projects. We'll talk to Rob about Black Tongue Bile, and we'll talk to Maria about Yarima, and we'll talk to all the different creators about all the different projects and stuff that we do. Of course, it's not just going to be about LovAnaverse and our projects. We're also going to be getting on, various other guests and talking about them and their project and, their own universe, as it were, of all of the things that they create and work on, and their kind of day-to-day thinking and reasoning behind it all, and the workings of, how they go about making a name for themselves. So I hope that this podcast is going to be enjoyable. I'm sure that we'll kind of get in the swing of things more as we go. I've personally never done anything like this before. It's my first time really just speaking openly to a camera like this. So, yeah, it's a new experience. But yeah, in the next episode, we'll get some guests on, and for most of the ones going forward. And I think that it's going to be a good time. I think that, it's going to be great to hear more people's experiences, and it's going to be exciting for me to talk to lots of interesting people because, as I say, I'm always so sort of inspired by others that, I'd really absolutely love the opportunity to pick some people's brains. So, we'll be sharing that with you on this podcast, and I hope that's going to be enjoyable. So, that's probably it for this episode. And, I hope that it was not too shaky as a start. I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? So, but yeah, I mean, I'll catch you on the next episode, and take care. All the best.